New reissues. Five great new reissues. Actually, six because one's a twinsy. Mazzy here. Thank you. Welcome back. Uh, it's a great time for vinyl reissues. I know some people get overwhelmed and people are bitching about prices of vinyls, but there's some great music out there. Um, again, my time period back in the 70s, primarily, everything stayed in print unless it was a dog and or the label got sold or something happened. But in theory, everything stayed in print, and especially if you were near a Tower Records store. I didn't work in a Tower Records. I had friends that did, but obviously we had one and several then in San Francisco and the entire Bay Area. But Tower grew, and they were the one store that their whole concept theoretically was to carry every record that was in print. So you would have esoteric, some great world music and international music and folk and jazz and rock and independent. Anything that was available, they would try to get, even imports and things like that. But I love that these reissues that just came out aren't the normal reissues that they're reissued all the time for the most part. And I applaud these. And I'm going to start out with this one, Ballad of the Broken Seas. This is coming out this week from Cooking Vinyl out of the UK. They've been doing some incredible stuff. Now, I am a huge fan of their reissues of the Billy Bragg records and the 40th anniversary last year of Billy Bragg with the big CD box they did, and was a double or triple vinyl. I just think those are excellent reissues. And this is Battle of the Seas by Isobel Campbell and Mark Lanigan. If you don't know this record, this is one of three albums that the two of them collaborated on. And Isobel Campbell was one of the original members of the Twee group out of Scotland, Bell and Sebastian. She was on several of their, was it three or four of their first albums, then went on her own for a solo career. Later would do this series of a trilogy of records with Mark Lanigan. Seattle person, unfortunately, died several years ago, was a member of the Screaming Trees and Queens of the Stone Age, and has a great set of solo albums that I literally only really kind of dived into over the last year. And I got this album, and this is probably one album in the last couple of days has been on my turntable more than anything else. I played it four times now, which is a lot when you have a collection like this. And it's all encompassed indie, little folksy, very reminiscent at times, not totally, to the collaboration Lee Hazelwood and Nancy Sinatra did. And obviously you have the twee vocals occasionally of Isabel. On here you got that deep, dark, moody, just languishing voice of Mark Lanigan on here. You have darkness on here, but it's just a really good cooking vibe, I should say, cooking vibe, cooking vinyl, cooking vibe, too many cookings in here. A slow, soft, wonderful record. A little bit of a folksy country, indie feel occasionally. Just lovely. I love it. I just adore this record. Ballad of the Broken Seas. This is on Cooking Vinyl. It would be great if they continue and do the other two at some point. According to my friends, this is the best of the three, although the other ones, of course, when you have this, you want the whole trilogy. So we'll see what happens then. Next up are the Twinsies from Kraft Records in Bluesville and Acoustic Sounds. Chad Cassim, a collaboration he's doing with Kraft. These are beautiful. Now, a couple months ago in a video, I did showcase their issue of Albert King's Live Wire Blues Power, one of my all-time favorite electric blues records from the Fillmore Auditorium, 1967. This is an incredible album. I've always loved this. I have an original. And the Kraft, this all analog cut by Matt Luthans at the Mastering Lab, did an incredible job here. And this is incredible. This is definitely one I highly recommend you get if you like electric blues, sort of that little psychedelic. It's not psychedelic, but because he was playing at the Fillmore, that kind of blues period of Albert King especially. Out of all the Kings, Albert is my favorite. Out of the BBs, the other King, the King Crimson, no. Albert's my favorite, and that and then, of course, Born on the Bad Sign. Those two especially are great. But the new ones that they just put out are these two. And this is, again, cut by Matthew Luthans, excuse me, at the Mastering Lab. You have Blind Gary Davis, Harlem Street Singer. Now, this is a really great record. Now, these are older recordings, so you're not going to get this perfect audio. You're not going to get the Muddy Waters folk singer thing, but they're really good, especially this one of the two. Now, they're both great musically. And again, the music is the primary thing here. And the blues, these are essential records as far as I'm concerned. Now, this one, I got into Gary Davis because of the Grateful Dead and Jerry Center playing, especially Jorma Kaukonen. A lot of those folk country blues things got into the Reverend Gary Davis. Blind Gary Davis, Harlem Street Singers. This is a record originally from 1960, and it's again, I think it's essential. Of course, this blues series has this OB that's removable. Great pressings as usual from QRP, all that stuff, which records should be. This is how a record should be. This is a beautiful tipped-on cover, like they should be. This is a price point, I think, like they should be. But this is a wonderful kind of country bluesy, folksy, wonderful record. The other one I think is essential too. Now, this is a little different in terms of the sound because people want to know the sound. So you got the OB. This is I'm Jimmy Reid. Now, this is a section of a selection of singles of recordings over about a 4 to 5, 6 year period, as I recall. So you're going to get some inconsistency with the sounds, and I think my guess is that Matthew Luthans did a sort of matching thing. When you do comps and you're doing reissues, you always have to deal with that. And so it's a variety of sources, but this is excellent. This is essentially one of the artists that groups like the Yardbirds and the Rolling Stones especially were very influenced by Jimmy Reid. There's that great Jimmy Reid Carnegie Hall album that is actually not recorded at Carnegie Hall. It gives you the impression this, but it's not a live album. It's a studio album. But that, I remember I used to sell that working for ABC Records. That was on the ABC label at the time. And it is a great, wonderful record. I think it's a double album, or there's a double version of it over the years at some point. But these songs are incredible, and this is an incredible album. I recently showed a special box set of Elvis Costello that came out, produced by T-Bone Burnett, King of America. And there's a picture of T-Bone and Elvis in Village Music in Mill Valley, probably in the 1980s. And he had this record in his hand, actually. I believe, I can't remember if it was Elvis or T-Bone, but this is an important record in terms of blues that really influenced all the British blues bands. And again, you're not going to get this audiophile thing, but it's not an archival, scratchy thing either. So this is something that is incredible. From Kraft Records, the Bluesville, Chad, and QRP, and Acoustic Sounds, and this Bluesville line, I tell you, this is one of the great reissue programs coming out right now. Now I'm going to talk about John Kale. Of course, John Kale, original member of the Velvet Underground, a classically trained cellist, became a great producer as well. 2 albums were just reissued on the Domino label. These records originally came out on Reprise. So Reprise has, and Warner Music Group doesn't have the rights to these any longer. And they put out 2. I only bought 1. First, let me show this because I didn't buy this one. This is the 1973 John Cale's Paris 1919. Of course, an early promo I got of this great album, white label promo. This is a beautiful sort of Baroque pop, wonderful singer-songwriter album. I just love this record. Obviously classical arrangements, but within pop sensibilities. Now, I didn't get the expanded version, but 3 people I know got it and said it's wonderful. And I'm tempted, but I'm kind of trying not to dive into doubling up. It does have an extra record of demos and alternate versions, which is tempting, but I hear this is amazing. Now, I did get the other one because I no longer have my original copy. And this is The Academy in Peril. This is from 1972. Now, this is a record that's very different. This is an instrumental, a classical, neoclassical instrumental album. You can't really call it avant-garde because it's not really obtuse and out there with the arrangements, but it's really, really beautiful. I love the cover art here. Actually, I should take this out. I like that they reproduced this insert, but they put it inside. These used to come in certain Warner Brothers records. If you look at artists like Little Feat and Ry Cooder, Warner Brothers especially, would put these in the shrink rack, but on this. It's a well-written, sometimes humorous, like an Obi, like a hype sticker, but it would tell about the record. And I remember buying several records. John Simon was one who was a producer, produced the band and Big Brother Holding Company, and put out 2 records on his own, which I just love. They're quirky. They're not for everyone. Van Dyke Parks is probably someone else that probably had one of these. But it has the time and the details, reproduction somewhat of the cover, and really kind of gives you a little essay of what this record is about. And I would devour these in record stores and occasionally pick the record up because of this. I think they should have shrink wrapped this on the exterior, but it's inside. So I think there's people that would see this and maybe not know what this is about. This is not a pop record. This is not a rock record. This is a classical, gorgeous record. Again, he's classically trained and wrote this. I love the cover. The cover is designed by Andy Warhol with these great Kodachrome transparency folio. It opens up like the original and with the images, and it's kind of that old Unipack style here. Polyline sleeves, black vinyl. I don't know if there's other colored. I'm not really a colored record vinyl guy, but this is so beautiful. I played this a few times, and I didn't have it, so I got this. Paris 1919 might be the more accessible for most people watching here, but I'd say this is a wonderful record, and I'm glad that Domino has reissued these and done a great job. Great pressings, all around, wonderful job from John Kale. One of my favorite albums the later years, I guess in the 80s, late 80s, was Songs for Dorella, that collaboration between Lou Reed and John Cale they did in memory of Andy Warhol. Or as Dorella is basically a combination of Dracula and Cinderella. That's how they referred to Andy on that. The Monkees. I'm showing this because if you are a Monkey fan, and you're either that first, second, third generation of Monkey fans, these are the only ones that sound excellent. Now, what do I mean by that? So far, there are only 3. This is their third album, Headquarters. Rhino just put this out as a double, and these emulate the expanded CDs that Andrew Sandoval, the curator, producer, worked on in the CD era. He's the one that, great archivist, very into Sunshine Pop, has a radio kind of show online about Sunshine Pop. He wrote a massive book on the Monkees. I don't have that because I'm not really an all-in Monkees guy when it comes beyond the music. But I love the Monkees. I'm that right in that pocket. But I tell you, the original Cold Gem albums were great when we were playing in our stereo in 1966, 7, 8, 9. But they're not great. And even the reissues that Rhino, the old Rhino did, aren't great. About 4 years ago, I believe, 4 or 5 years ago, Run Out Groove started reissuing these as 2 record sets. Now, Run Out Grooves was a division of Warner Brothers. Apparently, they ceased to exist now. But Run Out Groove put out some excellent releases. Morphine, I believe, Secret Machines. They were a label that you would vote. They would give you 3 choices. You'd vote, and they would press whatever that was based on the amount of people who voted. And it was limited. They were in stores or sold directly. But they put out the first 2 Monkees albums in this format. These beautiful covers, very much like Tone Poet covers or Rhino Hi-Fi covers. Just excellent. These are cut from the original master tapes by Kevin Gray. And Kevin said he apparently has done these already. He's done all these. So since Run Out Groove ceased to exist and suspended their operation. It seems like some of their stuff, at least potentially, is morphed into Rhino. Again, if you don't know, Rhino is the reissue segment label catalog segment of Warner Music, and they put out the reissues of all various uh, sectors of music. So they're continuing this series. This just came out in the last month or 2 months, and this is incredible. This is the best sounding Monkees record. Now, these are the stereo, which I'm fine with. You know, obviously the great top-notch songwriters of the day, they use Carole King and Neil Diamond, Bobby Boyce and Hart, and Harry Nilsson. They did great songwriting. This was, I believe, the first record where they actually all played, for the most part, all their instruments. And again, it has an extra disc, a bonus disc of remix versions and alternate versions on side 3 and side 4, which is kind of nice. But the original stereo mix, cut by Kevin Gray, these are the perfect versions, and I can't wait. And I hope they continue the series fairly regularly. And come on, put these out. Now, these are the ones to get, the Monkees headquarters. Lastly, this came out in the last couple months, and this is Everything and Nothing by David Sylvian. Those of you who watch me on a regular basis know how big of a David Sylvian fan I am. He was originally a member of Japan, the group Japan, which is kind of a glammy band. I accidentally stumbled onto in a club venue called Dingwalls in London in 1978, and I didn't know who they were. And, you know, glam rock, and then they kind of really changed and got in a little esoteric artsy thing. Obviously, David Sylvian, his brother was in the band. It was a great group, and they would do a series of more artsy. They really matured quickly. Tin Man, Gentleman Takes Polaroids, I think that's the name of the other one. I'm blanking out on the name. I love those records. David Sylvian would go on and get signed with Virgin Records and do a series of amazing solo records. A little bit of a folk thing, electronic, moody. His dark, low-key, brooding baritone voice is incredible, and I'm a big fan. It would be maybe boring to some people, but these are songs from his Virgin years. He went on after that, and he would start his own label. He left Virgin, and this originally was a CD that came out, a double CD, kind of a best of overview, deep cuts also of his Virgin. Of course, the one song which probably was the closest he had to a hit single, and he wasn't really hit single potential, was Let the Happiness In. David Sylvian would collaborate with a lot of really interesting musicians out here. Bill Nelson from Bebop Deluxe on guitar, Ryuichi Sakamoto from Yellow Matter Orchestra, and of course, a lot of soundtracks and electronic music. He merged and got even more electronic as his career went on, especially when he started his own label, and to do some great electronic effects on here. Also, you got Danny Thompson from Fairport Convention on here. Just a wonderful array of really interesting musicians. Steve Jensen and Mick Karn, of course, from Japan, and Raintree. That's basically album they did. Essentially a Japanese album, but it was their last album that wasn't Japan, the group under a different name. Mark Isham on trumpets. There are some things that aren't on the proper albums, but it's a beautiful 3-record set gatefold. There's a certain aesthetic musically and artistically on his records. Last year, one of my favorite box sets was the massive CD box set, sort of an overview, all his work on his own label. And this is sort of a precursor to that. This is probably the more accessible, semi-traditional music in a folky, artsy, minimalistic, ambient way. But just a wonderful, wonderful set. David Sylvian, Everything and Nothing, 3-record vinyl, came out in the last couple months. If you don't have any David Sylvian, this is probably the best initial dive. Secrets of the Beehive might be your first choice if you have to just get one proper album, but I think you might like this if you want a deeper entry into David Sylvian. So those are my 5+1 new reissues. Thanks for watching. Mazzy loves you.